One and a two and a...
And just like that, here we are on another brand new live stream right here on the Long Box Punk. That's me. I'm Chris. I'm the Punk, and I am joined by the modern master of horror. If I do say so myself, it's Cullen Bunn. Cullen, thanks for hanging out with me, spending a little bit of time with me on a Sunday. I appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. This is awesome.
Sweet. Well, I've got a page of notes that, you know, I know I told you I was going to start with your origin story, but I need to do this. So I just want to cover a couple things. I actually do take notes every time. But as I was preparing for this stream, I was like, okay, what are we going to talk about? Well, he's got Deluge and Ripcord, an upcoming CULT-DE-SAC from Ignition Press. He's got a novel that just came out, Bones of Our Stars, Blood of Our World. He's got a newish YouTube show, Cullenoscopy, which is probably the funniest name of any YouTube channel I've ever heard of. You've got a charity, the Midnight Lantern Foundation. You've got a newsletter that's done over 325 regularly scheduled posts. You've also started a secondary newsletter for paid subscribers. You've got Deepest Catacombs, which you're doing, which is like the single page like fake ads for a D&D game, which is just like the funnest delivery method that I've ever thought of. You're also writing short horror films. Plus you've got an insane back catalog of stuff. Like that's all just the current things that you have going on. And I don't understand how you function. How in the world are you doing so much stuff all seemingly at the same time?
Well, I mean, to some degree, that's an illusion because some of the stuff has been done for a little while. It's been banked or been completed years in advance in some cases. But that said, I keep a schedule that I would never recommend for anyone else because it only works. You know, there's always a big discussion of work-life balance, and you know, you should always have a good work-life balance. And for most people, absolutely, I think that's the way to go. Have a great work-life balance. That doesn't work for me. It never has. I don't want to be balanced. I don't want anyone to ever accuse me of being balanced. So the truth of the matter is I just work a lot. And I spend every day here in the studio working, writing stories or working on other, working on what I call like writing adjacent jobs, all the things that all the work that I really have to do. The writing part's fun. That's easy. It's all the other work that takes up so much time.
Yeah.
But I just spend a lot of time doing this. I feel like I spend time with my family, obviously, and I have plenty of downtime. But when I'm not having downtime, this is what I'm working. So the truth of the matter is, I just sit down and, the old saying used to be, if you want to be a writer, here's how you do it. Put your ass in the chair, put your fingers on the keyboard, and you write. And that's stuck with me for a long, long time now, is I just sit down. I come down every morning bright and early and I work until the evening.
That's awesome. Also, if you want to get into the merch t-shirt game, I think you just dropped a potential logo that you could include.
I do like that. I'm going to write it down myself because I think it's good.
I mean, it's It is true, though, the statement of if you want to be a writer, just sit down and write. And it goes along with a lot of the things that I've heard of you just got to keep it simple. Like I am a chronic overthinker. I always want to have everything planned out before I ever start. And that sometimes can just completely like paralyze me from doing anything because I want to do everything so well that I get focused on that. And then as soon as I spend 3 hours focusing on like, okay, if I do this and all the planning stuff, then I hear the thought of like, keep it simple, stupid. And I just like, that's something my English teacher told me in, I think, sophomore year. Shout out to Mr. Reardon. If you, but it's so true of just, you just got to keep showing up and you just got to do the simple things and start super early and just keep writing. But you mentioned the writing adjacent aspect. Like what all does that entail for
Well,
that you're working on?
I desperately wish that if all I had to do to make a career of this was to write, you want to talk about output. What you're seeing right now would be 3 times what I'm currently putting out. But you know, I don't have an assistant. I don't have a, I don't have an AI that will do all this stuff for me. I just have
Great.
to do it myself. But it's all once the writing's done, there's marketing and there's showing up on social media and there's going to conventions and there's planning conventions and there's ordering books and there's I spend a huge amount of time just sitting and plotting what the next year is going to look like. Like, what am I going to be doing in the next year? What am I going to be working on? What new things am I going to try? And I spend a lot of time doing that. And in fact, I'd say this last week, I didn't write anything. That's all I did was do all the stuff that goes along with it to try to make sure these books are reaching out to retailers, talking to folks like you, and it's just staying out there, staying in front of folks.
Yeah.
Being trying to maintain some form of relevancy. It's a ton of work. I mean, it's far more of that than actual writing.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say the same for even like this show. When I dropped, first year I was like, I'm just going to do all of it. And I was streaming 4 or 5 times a week. And meanwhile, my wife was on her phone on the couch, like, yeah, he's doing another thing. Like, okay. And so I quickly realized like, this isn't healthy for us. And so I dropped it down to 2 days and then it still was a lot. And I dropped it down to 1 day, but I wrestled with, I'm only streaming once a week. And then every time I did that, I'm a list person. I have to see it written in front of me. And so I wrote down all of the things that I do for this show, whether that's creating graphics, doing the research for guests when they come on, reading books, social media stuff, the newsletter posting, all of those things, like ordering stickers and all of that stuff. And suddenly I was like, oh, I do way more than just the single stream a week. And it's just the truth of 2026. I think doing anything, right? Like it's not just the writing. It's not just if you're doing a show, it's not just whatever it is. Like there's all that other stuff. It's that like overnight success thing of you see somebody suddenly break out with their title and it's like, hey, you seemingly came out of nowhere. And they're like, no, you didn't see the 10 years that I put into this
right
to get here.
I heard a couple of years ago, and I cannot remember the name of the creator who said this, and I feel bad about that. But I was in some event, some panel, something, and they were talking about, okay, so we've had the Silver Age of comics and the Bronze Age of comics and the Golden Age of comics. What age is this? And this creator said, this is the Iron Age, because we're standing over the fire. We're at the forge. We're pounding the metal and we're shaping it. And we're doing everything to make these things happen. Yeah. And it's absolutely true. I mean, that is, I love that thought. There might already be an Iron Age of comics. Who knows? But I think I think this is the the Iron Age for me anyway.
Yeah.
And it also makes me feel tough.
Right. Yeah, because iron isn't as malleable as gold or silver or bronze. Like it's pretty, you have to be tough. And that's so true with the industry. Like it's not just as simple as I want to make comics. I'm going to sit down and write and draw, and here's a comic. And I made comics. Great. There's all of the other things that it's taken me personally like 2.5 years to know enough to even start making my own comics. But it's like leading up to that, I had no idea of all of the other things that go into making comics other than just the sit down and putting fingers on keyboards and going.
Yeah.
So like what led you to this Iron Age of comics? Like where did all of this come from for you? What's your origin story, as it were?
So, as a kid, I always loved comics. I was reading comics from a very, very early age. And I remember, I have vivid memories of those first comics I ever read and the stories that kind of stuck with me. And then I always wanted to tell stories. I always wanted to, I wanted to tell stories, but I didn't care what format. I was drawing comics when I was a kid. I think in 6th grade, I was setting up at comic book conventions, selling my little hand stapled zine comics.
That's awesome.
So I always loved comics. Always wanted to tell stories. So it just eventually, when I, and I had diversions from that over the years.
Sure.
But going into college, I was like, I want to be a writer. And, I pursued a degree in creative writing, and I was sending out short stories and sending out novel proposals and sending out comic book proposals and getting numerous rejections. So but eventually, out of college, with my creative writing degree, I got a job at the comic book store. That's what you do when you have a creative writing degree.
Yep. Retail, here I come.
Yeah. And so I got a job at the comic book store, and that was honestly, that was my lucky break, because at the comic book store, one of my coworkers was an aspiring artist named Brian Hurt, and we hit it off. We became friends. And then over the years, we started talking about, hey, we should do a comic book together. Now that took 10 more years before we did a comic book together. But eventually Brian and I did a comic together, and we got it published. And then that sort of, I thought, oh man, I've got a comic published. This is it. The doors are now open.
Yeah.
Here comes fame and fortune. And then, 5 years later, I had no other work out. So it took another, 5 years for me to get something else going and to get work at other publishers, and to get the attention of editors. So all the while I was working, at that point I had somehow conned my way into a director of marketing position. So I was a marketing director at a company, but I was still on the side trying to get, I was doing comics, but then my goal had become, now I want to write full time. I want to do this as my living. And that took a little while longer. And eventually I got the attention of DC and Marvel, and they started giving me work, and that gave me the confidence to walk into my boss. I had a fight with my boss, and that gave me the confidence to walk in and say, I'm done. I asked my wife, I asked Cindy if she would give me 6 months to make a go of it, to see if I could actually do it. And that was 16 years ago. So
that's awesome. That's awesome. It does take, I've heard that sentiment a lot of like, you have to be willing to bet on yourself to take the risk and take the chance of doing this full time, or putting yourself out there, or even just, putting yourself on the page. You mentioned Brian Hurt, which is the Sixth Gun. And like, that's still, I was just at my local shop yesterday, shout out to Crooked.comics. And I feel like they were talking about like more Sixth Gun stories that were coming, or, you're still putting out one shots and still expanding and still go. And it's just impressive for a story that's got as many volumes as it does. Like, how do you keep that longevity going, or how to, like, How did you write that, do a whole bunch of other projects, and then come back to it? Like, how does that happen?
Well, the part of whatever's broken inside me, I can't let stories go. Typically, it's I start working on a story and it reaches a conclusion, and I do think there's a lot of value in a story that has a defined ending, and working towards that ending, and ending the story when it's supposed to end. And we did that with Six Gun, but that didn't stop me from still thinking, oh, what could I do next? Where could this go? What about this side character we mentioned on, in issue 12?
Yeah.
What's their story? What are they about? So I do that with every story I work on. And Brian Hurt does the same thing. So if we get together, it's really difficult not to talk about what do we do next? How do we expand this? We also, both of us really love a great sequel, in that how can you do a sequel that surprises someone or does something different, doesn't, that shakes things up and is additive and does something exciting. We both love that kind of that mechanism.
Yeah.
So it's just constant. It's actually keeping that in check is much more difficult and actually a big requirement. You have to keep that kind of, those intrusive thoughts have to be reined in quite a bit, because otherwise you don't work on the new stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So you mentioned too that, I mean, you and Brian knew each other long before Sixth Gun came out. Did that friendship and knowing each other, like, did that relationship help drive the success of Sixth Gun?
I think so to some degree, yeah. But I think the big thing that really helped the Sixth Gun do as well as it did was everyone involved was in it. We were all 100% committed to that story and making it the best story. And it wasn't just it was never a job. It was this, we want to do something amazing here. Yeah. So we were all excited about it, and we were excited about it from the beginning to the end. Every issue, we were very excited about it. And looking back, those are the stories that are always the best. When every player on the field is not just giving their all, but is actually, they love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It does definitely come through the page when you can tell that there's a team firing on all cylinders. And I wish there were more teams that could say that at a specific project. 'Cause like, those are the ones that personally make me just get really excited about comics and the medium. 'Cause you can tell that the creators really are putting everything out there and, like we mentioned earlier, taking the chance on themselves to say, hey, this is the story that we want to tell, and this is exactly how we want to tell it. You do a lot outside of comics. Does that take the same amount of like betting on yourself to step into?
Yes, in a big way, because I love comics, and I'll always do comics, but it's not the only thing I love. So I want to do other kinds of projects. And that definitely takes a little bit of intestinal fortitude, and it takes, you got to take a chance, and it can be scary, especially, I've done comics for so long now. I'm pretty comfortable with comics. I know how comics works.
Yeah.
But in other cases, I don't know how these, I don't necessarily know how screenwriting works, or writing a novel, getting a novel from the beginning to the end and getting it published and working with that side of things. I didn't know how that worked. So it takes a little bit of faking it. And I, just like I mentioned earlier, where I somehow conned my way into a director of marketing job. And along the way, conned my way into an IT supervisor's job. And I know nothing about IT. It was almost impossible for me to get hooked up to this interview today. And I ran IT for a major company for years. the one thing the other thing I've always been good at, maybe the thing I'm best at, is just faking it, just getting out there and doing it. And it takes a little bit of that. So when I wrote this novel that came out at the end of last year, that was a terrifying experience because I'd written plenty of short stories and I'd written shorter novels, but this was my first major novel. And it was frightening because I knew that, with a comic, if I write a scene, maybe not the best scene in the world, the artist might elevate it, right? The artist will elevate it and save the day.
Yeah.
And with a novel, it's all on me. If I don't write if the scene falls flat, I can't blame anyone else, and I don't have a safety net of someone else coming in to save me. So there was a little bit of fear with that. And there was a big learning curve with that too, because just like you were saying, you were overthinking with the novel. I started overthinking and I started going down numerous meandering paths that I would just write chapter after chapter about nonsense. And I had to, at some point, just say, okay, stop. I had to calm myself down a little bit.
Yeah, I have done similarly and I actually just watched a video, I think it was on Instagram, about Shel Silverstein, about how every page that he would write, like his poems or stories or do the cartoons or whatever, he always wrote out the alphabet. And that was to always remind himself of, instead of having to think, wait, okay, this word ends with this letter, so I can rhyme it with this other. He had the letters right there. And that was kind of his driving, like it helped him stay the course and keep pushing forward. And I've had similar experience where, I've written, we've got our main story, and then I did a couple short stories, and we came back to write chapter 1 of our main story. And I was having so much fun with it that I was just like writing. And we had to have, like, we had a friend read over the script the first time, and we got really good feedback of like, some of this is really good, but what does it do for this story?
Yeah.
And suddenly it was that thought of, crap, everything needs to be moving the story forward in some way, shape, or form, instead of just like having fun with the thing. Like, you have to almost limit yourself to do that. Do you have anything like that when you're writing, of just the reminders that you either keep in front of you or keep front of mind that you think of as you're working on it?
Yeah, I mean, a few. I don't have anything, like printed out or like Post-its on my computer or anything.
Sure.
But I have, little, especially with comics, I have like the Cullen's rules of comics that I keep in my head, and I always, and it's things, moving, you're going to move the story forward, obviously, but it's also things like every page should end on a panel that makes someone want to turn the page, and every page needs to reestablish the scene in some way, and it's little things like that I do always keep in mind. So it gets very granular at times.
Yeah.
And some of my rules are rules that other writers would scoff at. Oh no, that should never be a rule in comics, and I don't care. They're they're not the ones writing it, so it's okay.
Yeah.
So I have those rules in my mind at all times. Maybe then with the next novel I'm doing, I probably should sit down and think of some, what lessons did I learn from the first one that I need to and I love the first novel. I think it turned out great, but there are probably some things I could do to make it a little easier on me to get it to completion.
Yeah. That, like, learning from your experiences comes up a lot when I'm just talking to other creators, because I just never want to stop learning. Like, I never want to feel like I know enough, that I don't need to continue learning or trying to do things better. And
I'm pretty sure I know plenty. I know enough, but I still seem to make a lot of mistakes. So it's that's the, I guess maybe I know it all, and still I make mistakes. So
Mm.
I got to figure out how to eliminate those mistakes.
Yeah. But it's like it's the learning from that mistake so
Yeah.
that you don't repeat it thing of just like, I don't know, how do you keep track of those learnings, or do you?
Oh, I do. I have multiple notebooks that I have. I have plenty of notebooks that are just writing. Like, here's my ideas for stories. Here's the outline for whatever issue I'm working on. But I
Mm.
have a notebook somewhere around here that is basically, I used to call it my life hack notebook, and it's just it was just mistakes I've made that I don't want to repeat, lessons
Mm.
I've learned, phrases, things that people have said that inspire me, or things like that. And it's just a book of that. And I page through it pretty regularly, and I add
Mm.
to it pretty regularly.
I love that idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because I lost the book for a long time, for like 5, 6, 10 years. I lost the notebook, and then I stumbled back onto it. In within the first few pages, it has, here are the 100 things I want to accomplish before I die, and I
Oh, wow.
listed 100 things, and it was interesting to see the things that I listed, the things that I had managed to accomplish, because at the time it was like, I'd like to write a comic for Marvel, things like that.
Yeah.
And then the things that I hadn't yet achieved, and then the things that don't matter. And that was interesting too, is seeing the things that, oh, this was important to me 10 years ago and it means nothing. It's like, win an Eisner, who cares? I mean,
Yeah.
look, I'm not disparaging anyone who wins an Eisner because it's a big deal. It's not important to me to win an Eisner. It was at one time. And I don't think that's the kind of goal. I think that's an unfair goal to put on yourself, because then you're focusing on, I gotta win this Eisner, when what it should be is you got to write something amazing that gets attention and people gravitate towards it. That the winning of an award happens. It'll happen for you if you're doing something awesome, right?
Yeah.
But if you're focusing solely on that and you're ate up with that kind of thinking, it doesn't get there for you.
Yeah. That's like if you're focusing on only that Eisner, you might lose track of everything that you could miss out on
Right.
the path to it. Like I am a huge proponent of like celebrating the small victories, because I don't ever want to, 3 years ago, I was like, it'd be cool to make a comic, but like, that's probably not going to happen because I don't even know where to start. And then I started this show purely to learn how to make comics from creators that are making them. And suddenly 2.5 years in, I had received enough encouragement and all that stuff. And suddenly I did a Kickstarter, had a comic in my hand. And now like so everything that I do with that, and with, being on panels at comic conventions and working for a comic convention, like doing those things, every single one of them, I'm just like, this is the coolest thing. And if I was only focused on, I want to make a comic book, I would have missed out on all of the rest of that stuff, because I'd be able to say, yep, okay, cool, I did that. Like, what's next? And so just focusing on, and I get scoffed at a lot because I'm genuinely like, no, this is the coolest thing ever. And it's a perspective thing.
You've got to keep that attitude of it always being the coolest thing ever, because the moment you feel like, oh, this isn't the coolest thing ever, then don't do it anymore. I mean, I remember getting scolded by an author one time years and years ago, before I'd broken in really. I had short stories out there, but I had not really broken in any significant way. And he said, he scolded me for what you were just describing. And he said, this isn't fun for me. This stopped being fun for me a long time ago. And what I really wanted to say was, well, I can tell, because your last several books have been trash, hot garbage.
Yeah.
I know it's not fun for you. And yeah, never scold someone for loving what they're doing. I mean, as long as don't get me wrong. Look, there are some people who love things that shouldn't be loved, and they should be they should be scolded.
Yeah.
But don't scold someone for loving the comic book that they created and loving the process of it in a small way. Um, i- in my youth, my misspent youth, I spent an inordinate amount of time saying to myself, if I don't break in by the time I'm 22, if I don't have my big break by the time I'm 22, I'm just going to call it a day. If I don't have my big break by the time I'm 25, I'm just going to call it a day. And I'd say it over and over, and I'd get so frustrated. And I spent so much time worrying about other people who were getting their chances and getting their breaks. And I was putting so much energy into it when I should have been putting energy into just creating the damn thing.
Yeah.
Just doing something fun and cool and unique to me. But I was so concerned with the other side of it. And I couldn't, and that really, more than anything, look, I was bad at networking. I didn't get to go to conventions. There was a lot of reasons that I wasn't making progress. But the number one reason was I was too worried about everyone else and not worried enough about just making the thing.
Yeah, that's the social media fallacy too, right? Of like, well, look at everything they're doing. And it's the overnight success thing of you don't see what they don't post, and you don't see the work that, the 2 a.m. grinding of writing or creating or putting together a press kit or whatever. Like, what we don't see, we often forget about when we compare to other people. And so I don't know. Maybe it's not healthy for most people, but for me, I'm like, I don't even look at it. I can't.
Used to.
Yeah,
I used to look a lot, and now I don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm much happier for it. So.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
It's wild how that works out. So because it's weird, it feels like a weird juxtaposition to think about. Look at me using big words. With all of the horror and the dark and eerie and macabre books that you write, and also saying, yeah, no, this is still fun for me. Like, what about horror? As a huge horror junkie, I get it, but I want to hear, like, why are you always drawn to the darker themes and the horror and the monsters and mummies and undead and all? What draws you there?
Look, so the simple answer is obviously, hey, I was a monster kid. I always loved monsters. I've loved them since I was little. I'll love them till the day I die.
Yeah.
But it's more than that. And I'm obviously comfortable in the horror genre. I like writing in the horror genre. But it's, for me, writing horror stories to some degree keeps me sane, because I get to work out a lot of the troubling thoughts I have rattling around in my head, the things that scare me, the things that worry me. I get to approach those things in a safe environment. And hopefully that's hopefully that's what readers get from the books. I always want, I want my readers to be safe, but I don't want them to feel safe. And that's kind of what I'm trying to go. That's the malicious part of it. It's like, oh, I really want to scare somebody with this, or I really want to make someone upset. I really want to upset someone with this scene, or challenge someone with this scene.
Yeah.
But on the personal level, it's, I'm working out some inner demons and dealing with the things that really bug me, and they come up again. And a lot of these themes, I don't usually sit down and say, oh, this book about a werewolf is going to be really about the social dynamics of the family. It's never, but that kind of stuff will always, the things that are on my mind, the things that are haunting me, will always start to surface, and I see them, even if no one else does. And then the other side of it is maybe reading these horror stories. The reason I like reading horror stories as a fan is the same thing. It gives me a chance to kind of exercise these terrible thoughts.
Yeah. Have you ever, like, written something and I don't know if you share your work with your wife before it goes to press or print or anything? Like, have you ever written something and had a family member or her read it and go, Cullen, we need to talk?
Yeah. I mean, not my wife. I mean, she's read my stuff, but she's never said, hey, do we need to file some sort of papers or something? Do we need to get you some serious help?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, I've definitely had people read stuff, or I've read, I used to do these public readings where I'd read stories in front of folks, and I've had people who say, "Oh, are you okay? Is everything all right? Do we, maybe you should, someone gave me a cross and a crucifix and said, you really need this, and I want you to keep it with you at all times." So I think there's a lot. I mean, there are people that don't see that side of it. They don't see that this is my therapy, is writing these stories, and this is what's getting me through. And it's interesting, because if you look at if you go to a horror convention, horror fans are the happiest, friendliest, sweetest people you could ever hope to meet.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason is they've worked it all out in some way. They've seen things that have managed to clear their psyche.
Yeah. I love that. I do definitely pick up on that, because there's a horror hound that comes through, and I like to go to that just because I don't have to feel like the black sheep of the family,
right?
Because I like slashers, I like monsters, I like the psychological, the possession stories, all that stuff. And when I tell, I've given up trying to tell my mom and my dad and step parents about it, because they're just like, that's kind of weird, son. And I'm like, it says you, but I've given up. But when I find someone else that likes horror, and I do horror panels on the show now every October, and just being able to talk to other people that get it is so liberating, because it's like, yes, I grin when I know that there's about to be a brutal murder, because it gets me that little bit of adrenaline rush, and it gives me that release of tension that happens when the thing that's been leading to it finally happens on screen, or on the page as I'm reading a comic or novel or what have you. And there's something about finding your people. Have you always felt that way with other horror and comic creators?
All right, listen here, pal. I didn't know we were going to ask some tough questions. So I'm not comfortable around people. I have a very hard time. I have paralyzing social anxiety. So, I said earlier, I didn't go to conventions, and I didn't because conventions terrified me. Especially a convention where if I think, this is some sort of professional side of things or whatever. So I was never really good at that side of things, and I was always uncomfortable. I went to World Horror Con years and years ago. Was my first professional convention that I went to for professional reasons, right?
Yeah.
And I walked in I was stark raving terrified. I was absolutely mortified to be there. I was ready to turn around and walk out instantly. And what was interesting is I went to that convention, and almost immediately there was a horror writer that I knew of. And he turned and he says, "Cullen Bunn, come here, man." And he's like welcoming me. He's like, "Let me introduce you to everyone." And then I was like, "Oh, wait, here's my community. Here it is." It's not that I've been terrified of the wrong things, and it's a matter of finding your people. And I'm better now. Look, do I feel comfortable? Sure, sometimes. I feel better than I did in the past, and I talk to people, which is a thing that the Cullen of 16 years ago, 20 years ago would have never done. I mean, my interactions with folks now, it's very different than it would have been. And, but I'm still very aware, and I'm still very anxious in most of those situations. And that's I was just at a small convention that was very education focused, and they had a panel about networking, and everybody in the room's like, we're terrified of this. We can't do it. We can't network. And it's like, yeah, me too. I'm terrified of it as well. And you just have to figure out some tips and tricks that can help you get past that, and it gets easier. But I'm always a little bit anxious about those situations.
Yeah. And I think part of that too is just recognizing that a lot of creators are used to creating in their basements, in their studios, in their cars, wherever they can find, but it's always a solitary process. So to then take these solitary creators and stuff them into a giant room and say, okay, here's all the people that like what you're doing, talk to them, is like just the idea of a comic convention is terrifying.
Well, yeah, and a lot of people, I've had people come up and say, I met you 15 years ago, and I thought you were just really standoffish and really didn't want to talk to me. And I'm like, okay, the truth of the matter, I probably didn't want to talk to you at the time. I mean, but it's not because I don't like you. It's because I was super uncomfortable, and just, and now I try to keep in my head at all times, like at conventions, because I talk to a lot of creators who are either just starting out or trying to break in, and I've had some really awful conversations with creators in the past when I was trying to break in, when I had just started out. Awful. And they haunt me. They haunt me to this day. They will go with me to my grave. How dare I try to make some aspiring creator or just breaking in creator feel lesser? So anyone who wants to talk to me, I'm absolutely going to talk to them and give them my best shot. I'm not always on my A game. I'm not always feeling my best, but I'm going to try. And I even know I have the face of a person who just hates people. Like when I'm just when I'm just calm and like everything's fine, I look like someone who wants to kill you. Right. And it's not. Yep. So I have to force myself not to have that face. I have to be always thinking, don't have that face, because people are going to think you're a monster when you're not. You just, that's just how your face sits. I was born with a monster face. I can't help it. But I never want another creator like that to feel like they they don't have something to say. They don't have a voice worth raising. They don't, they don't have anything interesting to share in a conversation. If I get to that point in my life where I'm that way, again, the fun is out of it for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe I just need to call it quits.
Well, I hope that's a long ways off. Because you're still putting out regular books. Let's talk about the Ignition Press books that you've had recently with both Deluge and RIPCORD. And then is CULT-DE-SAC coming from Ignition Press as well?
It is. So most of my creator-owned future is with Ignition Press. So if you hear new books announced, it's either something that sold years and years ago and hasn't come out for whatever reason, or it's going to be with Ignition Press.
Okay. How did Ignition Press start? Like, how did suddenly I was seeing, because I always go straight to the indies sections. There's very few big two that I buy at this point, but I suddenly was seeing like, oh, that's Ignition Press. Oh, that's Ignition. Wait, how many titles are they putting out? Like, where did they come from? So what's your involvement with them?
They're a new company. I mean, they've been publishing for a year now, and they've been putting making the wheels turn for another year, before that, and actually a little longer than that, I guess. And it's all people that have worked in comics for decades, and it's all folks that I've known since I was first breaking in. So, I knew Jamie Rich when I was first breaking in at Oni Press, Jeremy Hahn, Phil Sablik, Eric Gitter. I've known all of the core team there. I've known since I was trying to break in.
Okay.
And so it doesn't feel like a new company to me. It feels like a group of people who got together and said, hey, let's do things differently in comics, and let's try to do things the right way, and let's support creators in a way that maybe creators haven't been supported in a long time.
Yeah.
So I was very excited. They started calling me as they started calling me in the founding days. Like, here's, the call is like, hey, we've got something cooking. We're getting this thing going. And, sure. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't we all?
But yeah, we all, me too.
Yeah.
But they had the drive and the commitment and the know-how to make it happen. And yeah, as far as how many books they've got coming out, who knows, because they're going in swinging. I mean, they have just a ton of new books. They have huge plans going forward. So I feel very lucky that they came along when they did in my career, and that I'm doing so much work for them now.
That's awesome. It really is about timing and just being at the right place at the right time, and not so much just, oh, he got lucky. Well, no, things lined up when they were supposed to, because from what I'm understanding, and feel free to say, nope, that's not it at all, but it feels like everything that you had done previously, like, led you to a point where you were ready for Ignition Press to say, hey, we want to bring you on because we're doing this thing and we want you to do it with us.
Yeah. So what you're referring to, I guess, is the fact that I was done with comics. I was ready to be finished with comics. And it wasn't that the fun was out of it. It's that I felt like I had walked into the enclosure of a silverback gorilla named comics. And that silverback gorilla had thrown me around like a rag doll for so long and treated me so poorly that I just couldn't anymore. And it was a moment, just like I had gone to my wife and said, hey, would you give me 6 months to try comics? I'd gone upstairs from the studio one day and said, I think I'm done. I don't think I can do this anymore. And if Ignition Press hadn't come along when they did, I wouldn't be in comics right now. I mean, I would still be writing, I think, but I don't know that I could have continued in comics the way I was doing things. And that's, I'm not going to get into the details of all that, but I was at a moment, I was at a crossroads, and there's Ignition Press, like the devil at the center of the crossroads, beckoning me to them. And I went ahead and I made that deal.
Yeah.
No, and they've been great. And what's interesting is I'm doing, I've done, like you said, RIPCORD and DELUGE and CULT-DE-SAC. Ignition's really into the idea of me doing the comics that I'm interested in doing, and taking chances on things. And in a lot of ways, it's kind of invigorated me. And I'm thinking of, I'm always thinking, okay, now what other crazy idea can I send them because there are some comics coming out from Ignition Press that have not been announced that are ludicrous in their.
I love that.
and they did, look, they have blinked at plenty of things I've sent them. But some of the things I've sent, I'm like, oh, they're never going to like this. Yeah. And they're like, let's do it.
There is something to be said about having the freedom to do and tell whatever story you want to tell exactly how you tell it. Like, how does, in that instance, when you send them a pitch of like, this is never going to fly, and they say, yep, let's make it fly. How does that work when you're working with an editor who, I don't know, how does bringing in somebody else and then bringing in the artist and letter, like, how does building that team around an idea that initially you may have thought like this would be really fun, but there's no way that this is going to happen. Like, how do you then get that same excitement imbued in the rest of your team?
Well, in the best of scenarios, it's all about trust.
Mm.
And if your editor trusts that, and I've, Jamie's told me a couple of times, this is the kind of story that I probably would have just rejected, but I know you can do it because you're stupid that way. But it's about getting a team that you trust. It's about the editor asking the questions that need to be asked. That a great editor is going to see, when you've got this pitch, where are the holes, where are the things you might have, you might not have considered, and they ask the questions that are additive rather than tearing up track for the sake of tearing up track. And it's a matter of the editor trusting me trusting the editor's notes, all of us trusting the artist's interpretation of, getting an artist that you trust and is going to be great, and trusting what they do with it. Because I mean, it's comics are collaborative, and unless you're the person who's doing it all, you're going to be working with a group of people, and in most cases, the books are better for it. I mean, when you have a team that is good at their job and they trust each other, the books are better for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you had mentioned earlier about drawing your own comics and selling your zines. Do you, when you're writing now, do you still like draw out your own thumbs if there's a certain thing that you're like, nope, this is how I'm seeing this moment in the story, to give your artist? Or is that a trust thing of like, here's the script, here's the page, here's the layout, like crush it?
Right. I do sometimes thumbnail the pages, on a piece of scrap paper, but I almost never send that to the artist. I just at the end, at the end of the day, and I don't even, I mean, in my scripts, I don't say things like, all right, I want this panel on the left and it's got to be a, 3/4 page, whatever. I don't do any of that. I might say this is a big panel or something like that, but I also, every script I write starts with a page that says, hey, if you don't like something here, if the way I've described something isn't working, you're the artist, go for it. Yeah. So I can't help but describe things the way I see them, but I don't give the artist like stage, heavy duty stage direction of this is how it needs to be, laid out on the page. Yeah. Just recently I wrote a page that I just didn't think I was describing the layout the way I envisioned it. So I did draw it, and I took a little picture of my phone and sent, I sent like, and it's a really bad drawing. I said, this is a terrible drawing. Here's what I meant. Because I don't think I was describing it well enough. And I did do that, but almost never. I mean, never. I do it myself, but I very rarely would I share that with the artist, because it's the artist, the artist is going to know how to, what's going to make that page sing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the relationship between artist and writer is always one that I love hearing about, because there's no one way to do it, right? Like everybody's got their own thing. If you've got a creative team, like when you and Brian were doing Sixth Gun, that have known each other for a while, that's going to be a different experience than when you're working with somebody on a new title that maybe you haven't worked with before. And it always fascinates me to hear how specifically writers, because I lend way more heavily towards writing than I ever would sequential art. But it just is always fascinating to me of the approach of all the different writers that they take. Do you find yourself wanting to like rework with the same artist because there's an established almost understanding, or are you like, nope, like let's see new artist interpretations of my words?
I like both. I mean, I'm never gonna turn down an opportunity to work with Brian Hurt from The Sixth Gun and the Damned, or Tyler Crook from Harrow County, those are, you know, or Danny Lucker, who did Jump Scare and Beyond Mortal with me. I'm always going to look, if we have a great relationship and we put out a book that we love, I want to keep working with them. And you'll see like Marika Cresta, who did Deluge, and we're doing a new book together now. And, you know, so if it's working and it's right, then yeah, I want to keep working with that artist. But I also like working with new art. I like working with new artists too, artists that I haven't worked with, because I think it does give something else, and it gives something different to the book. It makes the book more, you know, it can make a book more interesting. It can, you know, it can really fire things up in unexpected ways.
Yeah. Yeah. And then on the flip side of that, you're now doing like working on short horror films. What is that experience like compared to creating comics?
Oh, it's, you know, it's great. There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn in comics that applies to, you know, the collaborative nature of short horror films, because, you know, you know, I write a script, I talk to the director and you know, the directors of photography, and we talk to the actors we bring in, and come up with something that is, you know, it's bringing it to life in a different way. And there's still a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of input from all sides if people are interested in it, and there's trust in doing it, and trust that this is, you know, this is going to be a great thing at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And yeah, the short films are have been a lot of fun. And then yeah, I mean, and you learn something from that you apply to the longer film projects that are, you know, that are somewhere out there.
Yeah. Do you see yourself like leaning more into doing the short films? Like, is that I'm sure that's flexing different muscles as a creator.
I love the short films. The hurdle with the short films has been, up to this point, that my budget for these short films is absolutely zero. That it is $0. That is, if you get McDonald's while being on this film, you have earned more than I expected to pay out. I just don't have the budget to do them. So what that means is it falls to the filmmakers, you know, who, you know, if they've got other projects they're working on, a zero budget film is going to be lower on their priority.
Sure.
But I do like doing them. I'm going to be doing more of them. And working with different groups of filmmakers to do more of them as well. And what's nice is that the zero budget films are super challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, to create something that you can tell a story and not spend money to make it is a challenge that I like. It's super fun. Yeah,
that's one of those, like, having restrictions forces you to think differently when you're creating. That's why I like single page comics.
So hard.
It's very difficult for me to write one and have like a beginning, middle, and end with all of the things. And I like that challenge about it, which sounds I like a good challenge. That's not it at all. It's a fun way to work on different muscles in creating, taking on something like that. And so you've got the novels. You also recently did a solo journaling RPG style.
I forgot I did that.
Like, what led you to make a like solo journaling horror experience?
So as is often the case, I'm wandering around a convention and I'm like, oh, what's this? Solo journaling RPGs. What's that all about? And I walk out with a stack of them like this. Like, oh, because I just get excited about the ideas, about the formats, about what you might be able to do with something like that, and what it could what it would be like if I did something like that. And I
Mm.
do this monthly writing prompt thing for writers in the area where I give them the worst, I mean, just the worst writing prompts ever, and they write little stories and they share them with each other. Um, and so I like the idea of writing prompts. I've always loved role-playing games. I've always loved solo role-playing games.
Yeah.
And so I just thought, well, let's, I'm going to try my hand at a solo role-playing game. And that was, as much as I say, oh, I sit down here and I work, and I do, but sometimes I chase the wrong thing. So that was a week of me saying, I don't need to get paid this week, I guess. I don't need to write comics. Instead, I will write a solo journaling RPG that I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just going to give it a shot. And yeah, and so it was just me wanting to try something. I've got another one that, now that we talk about it, I'm worried that this week I'm not going to be productive on my comics because I'm going to fire that document up and finish the other solo journaling RPG I'm working on.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I like that kind of, I just like different formats. I like different ways of telling stories. I like the collaborative nature of a solo journal RPG is kind of fun because you're actually collaborating with the reader in a big way on that one. They're writing that story. And I like that you could write 100 different stories using that same book if you wanted to.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of me trying different things, and I'll continue. I will always be on the lookout for different formats of stories, different, delivery methods. I can't not I get excited about that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've got a friend and sometimes collaborator, Jimmy Z. Johnston. He'll come to visit for a few days, and we just sit, and that's what we do. Think of other ideas. Think of new things that we shouldn't be working on. We have things to do, but to think of new things to do and new formats.
Yeah.
And it's just that's part of, again, it's whatever is up here.
Yeah.
But it's always spinning, and it's always chasing different ideas.
Yeah. Well, the last thing that I wanted to bring up that I would be remiss if I didn't is the Midnight Lantern Foundation. Talk to me about that. Like, how did you have the idea to even start this, and like what is it all about?
So years ago, my son was in martial arts class. My son and I were in martial arts, but one of the things they did for the kids is they said, we want you to do something charitable. That's your, at the end of the year, we want you to do something charitable. And I honestly don't remember what he did, what his charity endeavor was. But when I started, I was watching the kids do these things, and I wrote down on my iPad at the coffee shop one day this long manifesto of, wouldn't it be cool if nerds and geeks could share the things they love with kids in need, and help kids in need, and at the same time inspire a new generation of fans who love the things, because we all love talking about the things we love, right? Yeah. And that fell aside because a lot of things happened. COVID happened, and all these different things happened that derailed everything. But at the end of last year, I went up to talk to Cindy, and I said, hey, remember when we were talking about this at the coffee shop one day? Let's do it for real. So we started the Midnight Lantern Foundation. It is our goal is we want to reach out to kids and families in need, and we want to make sure they have great birthdays and great holidays and great Christmases. But we want to do it all through the lens of the things we love: horror, fantasy, science fiction, comic books, board games, role-playing games. So it's all very focused on the things we love, and but we're giving to the community in some way. So we started sort of announcing it at the beginning of the year, and we started collecting some donations at conventions. We published a zine that you can get from my website, a digital zine that every dollar from the zine goes to the Midnight Lantern Foundation. and yeah, and it, just this morning, my wife and I delivered our first gifts to a family in need that needed. They're like, we don't have gifts for our kid's birthday this week. She stumbled onto them on Facebook, and we don't have gifts for our child's birthday this week. So, we were able to, just today, we delivered a number of gifts to this family, so that this kid's going to have a great birthday, with a little bit of nerdiness thrown in it. So yeah, so we're starting small. This year we've got a small goal for the number of families we're going to be assisting, but then we're gonna, knock on wood, all things working out, we're gonna expand every year and do more and more.
That's awesome.
And we're gonna do some really cool things towards the end of the year. We've got some really cool items that we're going to auction off for folks to raise money for the foundation, and yeah, it's I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I think if you go to midnightlantern.org, if you want to learn more about the foundation, you can go there and you can find out just tons about what we do.
That's awesome. I'll make sure that link is added to the description, along with your website and all of your socials and all of the things. You're going to get me all up in my feels, because I feel so strongly for kids that don't have the opportunities or the experiences as kids that some of their friends might be having, whether that's, getting the badass comic book for their birthday, or, getting a tabletop game for Christmas, or whatever it is, just to be given that opportunity to find something that they're excited about and find their thing. Like, I love that you're doing that. And if I had the budget of all the money, I would just give all of it to you. Like, just bless all of these kids, because I think it's fantastic.
Well, yeah, no, it's I just want to make sure, like I said, I feel like you do. I feel it bothers me a lot if I think, for the kids who just, for no fault of anyone, right, necessarily, they might not be able to get what they deserve. They're kids. Yeah. For God's sakes, we're only kids for such a short amount of time.
Right.
For such a short amount of time. So I just, and it's also the families too, because we do board games and stuff that families can play together and things like that, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's been very rewarding so far, and we've got some real exciting plans for it going forward.
That's awesome. I love that. I have plenty of other stuff, but I don't want to keep you for 7 more hours. So I'll do 2 more things. The first is simple. We're going to take a screenshot and we get to pose, and then I'll use that as the YouTube thumbnail. And I'm a sucker for props, so I'm going to hold this up, get my keyboard shortcuts.
Oh, wait, I'll hold up a book too.
Perfect. All right. On the count of 3, we'll go 1, 2, 3. Perfect. The other thing is the thing that I gave you the heads up about before we came live. And that's, I love doing this show because I get to talk to folks from all over the country, all over the globe, that all have different experiences, different ways of life. We might look differently, believe differently, but yet we also share our love of comics and creating. And so to lean into that diversity, I always like to just turn the mic over at the end of every show to every creator that comes on to say, hey, if there's anything you want to talk about, here's open forum. And I don't care at all about the content. It could be a sales pitch for your books. It could be a pitch for like, hey, go help kids in your community. The content is whatever you want to talk about. But I just want to make sure you've got some space to do that. So Cullen, take it away.
Do you know how easy it is for me to just ramble about nonsense, and I will just go in 1,000 different directions? You can't give someone this kind of power. Listen, I know that look, we all love comics, and I just would like to, it's something I've been talking to a lot of creators about lately, a lot of indie creators. We all love comics, and I think, and I love Marvel and DC. I love Image. I love all these things. I've loved comics since I was a kid. I would strongly recommend folks who love comics, if you're a Marvel and DC person, more power to you, but try something outside of your comfort zone. Maybe look for some stories that you're not necessarily expecting at publishers you're not necessarily expecting. There are a ton of great publishers out there, a ton of great creators who are doing some really fascinating books, some really interesting books. There's just so many out there, and we all know this, but there's a comic book for every taste. So if you have a friend who's into something and they're not into comics, introduce them to comics, share some comics that they'd love. Because look, comics has been dying for as long as I've been reading comics, right?
Yep.
But the way to definitely keep it alive is to keep spreading the word. So I would say, especially on the indie side of things, indie comics thrive on word of mouth. It thrives on people talking about it in your friend groups. It thrives on you talking about it online. They thrive on you talking about them at your comic book store, especially talk to people about indie books. It makes a difference. If there's something you love, for pity's sake, share it with folks. So that's what I'll say. And then my sales pitchy stuff is just, you can visit me at cullenbunn.com. I have a weekly newsletter, like Chris mentioned, that you can get all the details on what I'm working on and what I'm thinking about. Sometimes more details than I should be sharing, and definitely things I shouldn't share. I have my YouTube show is the Cullenoscopy, where I talk about horror with different guest hosts every episode. So check those things out, but you can get to all of that from cullenbunn.com.
Excellent. That's nice and tidy. It's like you've done this before.
I told you.
This has been awesome. I appreciate you making time on a Sunday. Hang tight after the drop. I got logistics for you.
Yep.
But for everybody else, thanks for tuning in, for sounding off in the chat. And like you said, if you like this, I only grow by you telling your friends. So do the thing and share this with somebody that likes horror, because they might enjoy this whole YouTube thing. I'm really bad at the sales pitch on YouTube because I don't do this for numbers. I do this because I like talking to creators. So what's a good podcast without a good tagline? Here's mine. Go do what's good for you and make some art, because we want to see it. We're out of here. Bye-bye.